Hey, have we got a great show lined up for you today, because I'm bringing in somebody who, well, I can't say ran against each other. We ran for the same office at the same time several years ago, and sparked up a little friendship then, and I still love hanging out with him. Ryan Hatfield is here with us. Ryan's going to talk about his term. He's left the state legislature. We're going to talk a little bit about that and a whole lot more. So stick around for This Week with Johnny Kincaid. Thanks for making us part of your week. Now, remember to share and like the program. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming episodes. We got some great ones coming up, too, by the way. We have Micah Beckwith, candidate for lieutenant governor for the state of Indiana. He's going to be on with us. But before he's on, we're going to be talking to Mike Braun, the Republican candidate for governor here in Indiana. I'm excited about that. We're working on all the details now, and that episode will be coming up within the next few weeks. So you don't want to miss out on it. So be sure that you subscribe. And now we're going to turn our attention to Ryan Hatfield. Ryan is, first of all, I want to talk about when we ran. This was in 2016, and we both ran for District 77 for the State House, right. The district that you won and kept. And many times I look at what goes on in Indianapolis and I go, I'm sure glad that I didn't win that race.
I will tell you, I get reminded often by my wife that she voted for you and wishes you had won and gone up there and fought those battles in the first part of every year. But, it's been a great experience, and I think it's true. You and I really ran for the same office, but worked really hard not to run against each other. And sometimes in politics that happens, and sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not. But I've always been really proud of the way we ran that race and maintained a friendship over the last 8 to 10 years since that race. And you never hesitated to say, hey, I saw that bill come across, or what did you do on that, or what did you think about that? And always had a good relationship. I think it's so important in politics and in civic debate that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, we all have something to offer, but also just because you ran for the same office or wanted to run for a certain office or believed that you were capable of serving in a certain office doesn't necessarily mean you have to be enemies.
Right. And we had, right after the primary, you had a rougher primary than what I did, although my primary was with the guy who lived right across the street from me. So
I'd forgotten that. And for those watching, we had talked just a touch about this before the show started, and I had forgotten that his neighbor, right across the street. Was your primary challenge. I did not have that. You're right.
But you had a little. It wasn't the most fun primary, right? And because here's the thing: primaries, it's an opportunity, because theoretically within the party there's a certain area that you fit into as a member of a political party, but you still have room to slice out your own area. And in the primary is where you have to highlight those differences between you and the other candidate, because you don't have a party line to do that with. So sometimes it gets a little dicey, because it can come across like infighting within the party, but it's not. It's trying to find your own lane to get into, and keep your primary opponent in their lane as well. And that can get dicey during the run.
For sure. And you're in primaries, you're dealing with so many friends or people that you thought might be with you or should be with you, or you have folks saying things about you that you feel like, wait a second, we all agree on this, and this really shouldn't be a contentious issue between us, to where when you're running against the other party, sometimes those lines are a little clearer. Even with friends, you understand that's where you're going to hit me, or we have a difference of view on this, and that's just the way it is.
Right.
It's much more difficult, and I make it akin maybe to families. family fights are sometimes a lot harder on you than, having a disagreement with somebody at work. And it's just that you feel like, hey, wait a second, you're trying to make a difference here, and I'm not sure there is one.
Right.
Where, between us, we debated, and I felt like we had some policy differences.
Exactly.
But we both, I think, agreed that, at least I felt, and I feel like we had an agreement that I thought you had what was in the community's best interest, and that you were going to try to do the right thing. And even if I disagreed with you on that was okay, because I thought that your heart was in the right place. And I think that's so important in the civic debate, is to understand that just because we disagree doesn't mean that their heart isn't in the right place.
Right. And it was kind of fun to watch the media react to it, because the media picked up on this because it was more of a camaraderie than anything else. When we went for the NRA, trying to get the NRA endorsement, and I think that our scores were really, really close on that NRA questionnaire,
if not the same. Yeah, I don't remember.
I think we were. Yep. Yeah, we were both either A or A plus, I think, as I recall. But
right.
So, and that doesn't happen very often,
and would probably drive someone of your party crazy that I would have that sort of score
right.
From my former party, and so I think that but it was genuine in that. We aligned on a lot, and we had differences, but we talked about those differences rather than threw them at each other.
Right, and it was always done with the idea that we just had different vision. We knew where we wanted to go. We had different vision of how you get there.
Right,
and it was always about what's best for the community. And frankly, I think that's the discussion that is missing so much from politics today. Is more about, we have to win. Our party has to come out on top, or whatever, right? We have to maintain our supermajority, or there's any number of things that they throw out there to talk about why they need to win the race. But I would much rather hear them say, we need to win this because we have a better idea.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And here's what that idea is.
Right.
This is why you should vote for us. Not so that we keep a supermajority, but so that if I'm representing you, you know that I'm going to take this stand, and it's important to our community. And that's just missing at a wholesale level. And I would not have to jump up and down and scream and shout and hold my breath till I turn blue in the face on this podcast as often as what I do if people weren't looking at it from that competitive standpoint, and instead we're looking at it from the community good.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that we understood that about each other early on, and it doesn't mean that you don't get your feelings hurt, or that you don't see a post and you're like, that's not true, or I don't like that one. But I think we very much tried to stay grounded in, we're running for our own reasons, and it wasn't personal about you, and I never felt like it was personal about me, that you felt like you'd be a better representation, and I felt like I'd be a better representation. And we had those conversations about what that meant. And I think that's really important, and is so seldomly done today. And
before the primary, I had a long conversation with Cheryl Musgrave, and Cheryl gave me the best advice that I never took, which was, she said, "Don't run for District 77." She said, "You will not win," and I smiled and I said, "Thanks for the advice," and I went ahead and ran anyway. Here's the thing, though. It was such a blessing to do it. That it doesn't matter that I didn't win that race. It was the opportunity, the experience, the chance to get to know you, and just the opportunity that learning that takes place during the course of a campaign is just phenomenal.
Definitely. The people you meet, the activities you're exposed to, the community events that you're exposed to, the goodwill going on in the community. I tell people all the time, it may not be a good idea for you to run for this particular race at this particular time, but running for office is really a joy and an opportunity to see your community in a whole new light.
Yeah, and I can't tell you the number of times that I heard I'm sorry, we've already committed to Ryan Hatfield. A sign in here at our business. I'm sorry, we've already committed to Ryan Hatfield. Number of times I heard that.
I probably well. Let me say this. Cheryl Musgrave, I credit for giving me a piece of advice that I've found very true, and one of the better pieces of advice I've gotten in politics, which is it's not as personal as it feels. Mm-hmm. That when people go into that ballot box, they may have a feeling about you, they may vote for you, they may not, but the reality is it's not actually about who you are as a person, that those votes don't make who you are as a person.
Right.
And I've tried to remember that so often. I've had some electoral success, very grateful for that. But because of that electoral success, I went to Indianapolis, I got my teeth kicked in and day out. And I tried to remember that it wasn't an indictment on who I am, and I have credited her with that and remembered it so often when things didn't go my way or I didn't get the votes in a certain debate, because it's really true. We do our best as candidates and as a society to put ourselves out there and to get to know the public and let the public get to know us. The realities are they know the very top level of you.
Right.
And there's a whole person in there. And I try to remember that when I hear a debate going on of two other candidates or if I meet a candidate. I'm getting a very surface level of them. And Cheryl Musgrave was right. Don't let it define who you are, because you were a whole person before you got into this mess, and you'll be a whole person after you're done.
So here's a private note just for Cheryl Musgrave. Hit rewind and watch the last couple of minutes of this over again, maybe over and over again, because there's been some real wisdom shared by Cheryl, and I've always appreciated her. All right, so you got into the legislature then as a part of the super minority, and
leave it as part of the super minority.
that's a tough position to be in, and I know that can be frustrating sometimes. But what I noticed about you, and I'm going to put in a plug here for Ryan's work ethic, because Ryan would give the time to meet with his constituents, to go to the Meet Your Candidate, the Meet Your Legislator forums that happened during the session. And Ryan was one of just a few who was always there. And there's a lot to be said for that, because it shows your heart to serve the people. And it truly is the thing about elected office is you're there to serve the people. The other thing is that you were able to work with, every other person from this end of the state that was driving up to Indianapolis was Republican. You worked with all of them.
I did, and so grateful and honored to have done so.
Mm-hmm. Two people that are just at opposite ends of the spectrum are Ryan Hatfield and Jim Toms, right? I mean, from a philosophical standpoint, you guys are miles apart. But you guys, knowing that, found a way to work around it and to have a good working relationship, and to be able to kid with one another and make it work for you.
And I think it goes back to recognizing the folks on the other side of the aisle or the other side of the issue, and particularly in my party, but in the other party as well. It didn't always break down on party lines. Sometimes your opponent was within your own caucus. But what I've always tried to remember is Jim has a wife, Margie, who I know, who I like, who I wouldn't want Margie to go home thinking that I'd said something about Jim or their family that was personal in any way, that they have kids and grandkids who they love, who they talk about. I talk about my kids, and it's genuine. And sometimes in politics, we accuse folks of using their children or using their families, and I think it's so important to remember that, sometimes people take it over the line, but most of us genuinely love our families and want to talk about them and include them in our dialogue. dialogue. And one of the things I recognized early on about Jim is Jim was sincere about his family and love for his family. And that's a connection point for he and I. I love my family dearly and in many ways have shaped my career and my life around them. And I'm excited about that. And I feel like Jim has as well. And that doesn't mean that I think he's right on every issue. And I can promise you that Jim's watching this thinking, I don't agree with Ryan Hatfield on every issue. But I do think that we found a mutual respect in some ways, like you and I had found, that this is a guy that's trying to do his best for the community. And when I disagree with him, I owe it to my constituents to say so. But that doesn't make him a bad person.
Right.
And it doesn't make him any less of a family man or that his beliefs are any less genuine than mine are.
Yeah. And, you guys, when you'd go to the Meet Your Legislators events, there was a camaraderie there that the audience could pick up on, and necessary because people come with their gotcha questions to that, and that's part of the reason why some of the other people stay away is
Right.
because they don't want to sit through the gotchas. And I understand that, but I have a much higher level of respect for you for being willing to go and face them. Than for the people who found other things to do with their Saturday.
I always used to tease Jim that that crowd at one point had I think Republican legislators had moved a little bit to the left, and they were getting the harder questions. And Jim Tom single-handedly started filling the room with loyalists and people who believed in what he believed in. And over time, it started to shift away from me. And all of a sudden, the crowd was cheering for Jim and was booing me. But we had good fun, and that's just part of it.
Yeah. So when we first met, you were newlyweds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're growing up 3 girls.
2 girls and a
girls
boy.
and a boy.
Yeah, Olivia, Rose, and George, 5, 3, and 1.
And fortunately, they're getting their looks from their mom. So.
Fortunately, yeah, thank God. And we're having so much fun.
Yeah.
My departure from the legislature probably started. Not last February, but the February before, when my now 5-year-old, then 4-year-old stood in the kitchen and cried and said, "Please don't go." That was kind of the beginning of the end for me up there. I believe in the work. I loved that job. I really respect those who can do it for a long time, but my place was with my 3 kids and my wife, and to be at home with them, and it's not a full-time job up there, but it's a tremendous responsibility and a tremendous effort to take 3-4 months out of the year and to live and work in Indy, and we're just far enough away that I wasn't able to get back every night, and so I spent my weeks up there, and that Kendra and I made that work early on before kids, and with 3 kids, it's time to be at home.
That's good, and that's where the priority should be. Right. So, so now you're going to take off the Democrat hat into a nonpartisan position, and you're running for judge.
I am, and I'll speak to the first part of that first, because one of the things I am not doing in this race is I'm not pretending that I haven't been in the legislature and I haven't been part of a party, and I have been, and the voters will see that and have to deal with that as they will. But I also think that they'll see somebody who takes very seriously the role of a judge and takes very seriously the importance of being an independent. And, we were chatting about some partisan political events here before we started, and I genuinely didn't really know the details of some of it. And that's because I am very much in my lane. I'm taking care of my 3 children. I'm focused on the judge's race, and I am focused on maintaining independence and not falling into the very divided partisan divides of party politics.
Right.
One of the things that has helped me, Johnny, is I watch a lot more Bluey than I do any news organization.
That'll help a lot. Yeah.
And Bluey plays it pretty much down the middle, and so I've been able to kind of let that side, and it's been good. And Kendra and I look forward to kind of a less political role, but hopefully an active role in the judicial system and ensuring that everybody's treated fairly in this community.
Good. You get Bluey. We're stuck on stinky and dirty now.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I never realized any of that existed.
Yeah.
And now it's like stinky dirty. Little 2-year-old one to watch. Yeah. So
Even my Instagram feed is now filled with Bluey, and so I'm all in.
but you only have those years once. That's So I'm happy for you making this move and being able to spend more time with the family, because the last thing you ever want is to get to their graduation and go, where did those years go?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you end up missing a lot. And my kids started to get into just swimming lessons and gymnastics, and you're missing them. And what is especially true as they are younger, I don't have any older ones, but they also don't fill you in. So I'd be, in Indy at 8:30 calling saying, Olivia, tell me about gymnastics tonight. And she's not that interested in telling you about gymnastics. And so you're left out of it. And
right.
and the folks that do it, their heart's in the right place too. And it's just a very tough life. And I had to make a decision. And so I look forward to the next opportunity and hope that it works out. But it's a sincere effort to dive into the judicial system in this community and ensure that we are dispensing justice in a way that is fair and recognizes people as human beings, but also ensuring that we're doing everything we can to keep the community safe.
Yeah. And this is your passion anyway. I mean, your background as an attorney, but also the committees you served on in the legislature. It was all kind of prepping you for being able to do this.
I appreciate that. I feel like that's true. I served in the early part of my service on the Criminal Code Committee. I also served as the ranking minority member for the last 4 or 6 years on the Judiciary Committee. Prior to being in the legislature, was a deputy prosecutor. And so I have worked in these courts my entire career and have tried cases in these courts and both civil and criminal, and have worked with these judges very closely and feel like I can lend my experiences to the court in a way that hopefully the community sees as positive.
Yeah. So, all right. Here's. I get curious about things, and I'm really curious about the crime rate that we're seeing in our country, and as a whole. I mean, I've heard some people try to dismiss it as being, it's just the media putting more focus on the crime that's always been there, and
right.
But in other arenas, people are really feeling strongly that crime is up, and if you do a search for Evansville and Safe City or Evansville Dangerous City on the web, you'll find Money Inc. with their listing of the most dangerous places in Indiana to live, and Evansville ranks like 3 or 4
right.
on that list. What do you is the crime going up, or is it getting more attention? What do you think? Or maybe a combination?
Maybe both. I think that the news media is certainly pumping out stories probably at a higher rate, but perhaps because our crime rate is at a higher rate. And anybody who says that it's just a media creation is simply not paying attention. Homicides have been up for the last several years in the city of Evansville. Fentanyl is kind of the new drug coming in, but we were at the highest in the state for methamphetamine at one point. We were the highest of the state for heroin at one point. Our neighbors to the east had serious problems around cocaine and heroin, and now we see fentanyl coming in, and the difference about fentanyl is you don't get much of an opportunity before it stops your heart. And Our officers are doing a great job of trying to keep up, but the reality is they can't, and it's coming in big amounts, mostly coming from Mexico. It's mostly coming through the border, and it is a serious effort by those who want to sell drugs in the Midwest. Straight out of Mexico into Houston, a lot of times Atlanta. We have a big portion of our drugs coming from Charlotte, and then even some from LA. The prices out of LA are a little higher, so we get a lot from the South. But the reality is drug use is up, homicides are up, violent crimes have stayed steady and at times spike. And what is way up that we didn't see even 10 years ago when you and I were running are the amount of baby deaths, the amount of young kids getting a hold of drugs in their house. That's recreational use. That's mom or dad or mom and dad deciding I'm going to keep drugs around the house. And they're on the nightstand in my room, so hopefully the kids won't get them. Well, they are getting them, and it's leading to really serious consequences in the community. And I also believe, I know you do too, because I remember a conversation you and I had in a public forum. It's an all-of-the-above approach, and the judicial system needs to be a part of that. It's not just on our police officers. It's not just on our mayor. It's not just on our governor. The truth is the funds that have been dispensed from the state are substantial and have been increasing. The funds that we received from the opioid settlement that the mayor and the county commissioners are dispensing are substantial. But the judicial system, the judges, the probation officers, we all have to be a part of this solution and making sure that not only are we preventing drugs from coming in, but we're handling them seriously when we have drug dealers in front of us in the courts. And officers are doing a really great job. And look, I've practiced some criminal law over the last 15 years continuously in different forums. And our officers are doing a really good job at saying, hey, you're a small-time user and you need rehab. And here's a list of resources. Or you're not a user, you're a dealer, and we need to take you more seriously. And so that conversation has been good and a change over the last 10, 20 years. But we're doing a pretty good job at identifying users versus dealers, but it's going to take a group effort at making sure that we're not only preventing the drugs from coming in, but then also what do we do once they're here?
And I would assume that the prison and jail population has a lot to do with this too, because if your county jail is too full, and the next step up on the state level is also too full, what can you do for sentencing at that point?
Right, and this is a long conversation, but in short, the state has not, in my opinion, done a whole lot of favors for local judges and local county commissioners and county counselors in figuring out how to deal with their jail populations. One, they took low-level felonies and required them to be placed at the jail, which created an economy amongst jails, which is really what's going on. It's not so much that there isn't room at the prisons, although the prisons are full. The jails now get a higher per diem rate per day for an inmate from another county. And so when Vanderburgh County sends an inmate to, say, Posey County or Gibson County, Posey County and Gibson County gets a higher rate for that inmate than they do their own folks. And so now what we have is we have counties building bigger jails to accommodate prisoners or inmates from other counties because they get a higher rate. That economy, in my opinion, probably is not working and needs to be addressed by the legislature.
Because it sets up an industry.
It sets up an industry.
Yeah.
And these sheriffs are doing their best, but one, their jails are full. Two, the sheriffs with older jails or crowded jails have problems keeping their people safe, which is important, making sure that our jailers are safe. But they also are recognizing that if they're able to take in folks from other counties, they're able to have more resources to protect their deputies or their jailers or their staff members. And so you've created a situation where they need to take those folks in, want to take those folks in, but the economy probably is spreading inmates out in communities that aren't theirs, creating mini jails, and making it more expensive for the state. And that would be my concern. But I think, look, one of the reasons I'm running for judge is I think that I would be able to work well with the sheriff to try to minimize our cost in sending inmates out to other counties. We either need to renegotiate with the state legislature, or we need to do a better job at keeping them here or processing their case through.
See, this has been it has been a primary passion for me for the past 15 years is jail and prison ministry, and I've volunteered. I taught in one of the prison facilities here, and what I've learned is that there's a very strong need for really good reentry programming, and I don't know that we put enough emphasis on that. We were teaching manufacturing skills, and then I would throw in a whole lot of life skills on top of that, right? And seeing good results, and our recidivism rates from our groups that went out were actually beating the average. But we've got to do something within the system that we're not just going, okay, here you go. We've got, these guys are going to come into our neighborhoods. And do you want somebody in your neighborhood that is completely unskilled, only knows his criminal endeavors, or do you want somebody who has some skills, is willing to work, and has learned to get along with other people and deal with his anger issues? What do you want in your neighborhood? And most people say, well, I don't want the criminals living in my neighborhood, but they're coming. Right. They come out, and we've got to give them opportunity, or they're going to be right back in again.
Well, and two real life choices here. Would you rather have somebody coming out of jail who maybe has spent 6, 12, 18 months in jail with a transition officer that ensures they have a phone, an ID, transportation, whether that be bus tokens or something else, and a job? Or would you rather them walk out of that jail over there, no ID, no phone, no transportation, no job lined up, and no housing lined up? The risk to the community is that latter person with no opportunity in front of them. Right. Much more than it is the example of somebody who comes out with a transition officer who says, we're going to help you find housing. We're not pay for unlimited housing. Right. We're going to help you find transitional housing. We're going to ensure you have a job. We're going to make sure you have a plan for transportation. We're going to make sure you have a cell phone, because we found out how vital those are to ensuring they're able to keep their jobs and maintain relationships. And we're going to make sure, just as simple as, you have an ID, so you're able to identify yourself for employers or anybody else you come in contact with. That person, the opportunity in front of that person is so much greater, and the recidivism is so much more unlikely. And in the circuit court, there's a veterans court right now helping veterans who find themselves in problems, or veterans who are struggling with addiction, that's had wild success. And Judge just won awards for his participation in this veterans court, and the way that he set it up and the results they've seen. That's something I look forward to continuing on and helping ensure that when a veteran, somebody who served this country, finds themselves into a problem, not that they're not held accountable, but that we have opportunity for them on the other side of that accountability. Yeah.
And there are people in the system. This is the thing. We want to think that all of the people who are employed in the field of corrections, and there are all these tough dudes out there, wanting to be tough on the inmate. We've got some people who have really good hearts within the correctional system, and that really want to see these guys get out and develop a life. And they work really hard to try to cultivate the jobs for people when they get out and all of that. But I just think there's so much more that we could be doing there. But it obviously, dollars dictate a lot of that too, right?
Dollars dictated a lot, and we have not historically done very well with resources for those folks. We're doing much, much better. We need to continue to do better. But we also need not put our counties in a position to where they're struggling to have resources to deal with these problems. I really commend the Vanderburgh County for what they've done with our jail, and not only building it, but right now they're building on a mental health wing and ensuring that it is capable of handling the needs of our community.
Yeah. Lots of changes have happened, and more changes are to come in that system. So, just hope that it keeps moving in the right direction.
It has to.
Yeah,
it has to.
And I know that you'll bring a heart for that with you into your judgeship, and it's going to be fun to watch what happens over the next few years.
I appreciate that very much, Johnny. It's it takes a village, and look, ministry for those incarcerated is an important part of that healing process, and for so many of our inmates, that we need to ensure that those folks are able to get in too.
Yeah, and there is nothing like the prayers that you say just before eating a tetrazzini meal in a maximum security facility, because turkey tetrazzini inside, it's not the best thing I've ever had. Anyway, Ryan, I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate your time and you coming in, and good luck with the campaign for judge. I think that you'll, like I say, I think that what you've done with your career up to this point actually just makes it a natural move for you, and I look forward to seeing that take place.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will work hard at it and try to make sure that the community is served by the circuit court.
And I know that you're going to be a part of an event that we're still working on the date on for City County Observer.
Yes.
Which I think is going to be just a great event with it's basically it's everybody involved in the process,
right?
When it comes to law enforcement and incarceration, it's going to be a great luncheon, and I can't wait for that to take place too. So I'll look forward to seeing you at that, and we'll get a podcast episode out of that get together too. So it'll be nice.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to join us here on This Week with Johnny Kincaid. Be sure again that you hit the like button. You can smash it as many times as you want. Hit the share button, and of course, always subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. Check us out on the City County Observer at city-countyobserver.com, or in the print edition of the City County Observer. You'll find more news about what's going on around the area and what's going on with this podcast. So be sure to check that out as well. I'm Johnny Kincaid. I'll see you next time on This Week